First annual Neighbors in the Park. Give it up for yourselves. Thank you guys from the bottom of my heart for coming. This has been in the works for some months. It's really nice to see residents come through and educate themselves on environmental issues. Lovely team of panelists here. We've been campaigning against General Iron for some time now, so everybody's going to introduce themselves, pronouns, and then we'll get started with the questions. I'm Yesenia Chavez from United Neighbors of the 10th Ward. She, her, ella.
Hi everyone, my name is Alejandra. I'm also a member of UN10 and my pronouns are she, her, hers.
Hi everyone, so my name is Trinity Colon. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a student at George Washington. I'm a junior and I'm also serving as the LSC student rep.
Hi, my name is Lauren Bianchi. I'm a social studies teacher at Washington High School, and my pronouns are she, her.
Hello, my name is Chuck Stark. I teach science at George Washington, and he, him.
My name is Peggy Salazar. I'm a resident of the Southeast Side and the Executive Director of the Southeast Environmental Task Force. And my pronouns are she, hers, and it. I'm teasing.
I guess this is what we're doing. My name is Luis. I'm an organizer with the Southeast Youth Alliance. My pronouns are he, him, his.
Alright, so the way it's going to work is I'm just going to ask the questions, and whoever just wants to respond, give me a nod and I'll pass the mic over. We're going to start off with a very important question of what is environmental racism? Mr. Stark.
Yeah, this is one I've been working a long time at, trying to understand what is environmental racism, because we've been using this word a lot, and especially in this campaign to stop General Iron, we're starting to use it a lot more. And one of the people I looked to for this was Robert Bullard, and he's considered the father of environmental justice. And this came from the Environmental Justice Resource Center at Clark Atlanta University. And he says that environmental racism refers to any policy, practice, or directive that differentially affects or disadvantages, whether intended or unintended, individuals, groups, or communities based on race or color. Environmental racism combines with public policies and industry practices, which are both things we're experiencing here with General Iron, to provide benefits for whites while shifting costs to people of color. Environmental racism is reinforced by government, legal, economic, political, and military institutions. From what I can tell, and I know we're going to get into what is General Iron here in a moment, but everything that General Iron is doing fits within that description of environmental racism, from my perspective.
So I would just like to add to that our community actually fits the definition of environmental injustice as well as environmental racism. And you have to understand that the people pushing those policies are leaders. So it's General Iron, but it's also the city of Chicago. So keep all of that in mind.
So I think it's important when we talk about environmental racism to kind of tie it into the education system, and especially because we have so many George Washington staff and also students. I think that it's just an extra layer, especially when you're already in an oppressed community that is predominantly Hispanic and Black and with low income. So I think that that's just kind of an extra layer that we have to face. We already don't have these opportunities because we're not Jones, or because we're not Whitney Young, or because we're not on the north side, like because we're South Side residents. And it's just clear that Chicago and also General Iron, but we can get more into that later. But it really is just clear that environmental racism is pushing us to this side. And kind of not allowing for minority voices to be heard or really mattered or valued, honestly.
Very, very good responses, great details. Our next question is going to be, we're battling environmental issues again on the east side, but this obviously isn't our first battle, right? How did we get here? How did the southeast side get here again with battling another serial polluter?
I think what people have to understand is, historically, we have always been in a neighborhood and a community and an area that was dumped on, right? The South Side had the steel mills, it had all the polluting industries, it had the landfills where the rest of the city sent its garbage. It has even the place where our wastewater gets sent. So when you flush your toilet, guess where it goes? To the South Side. So you have to understand in a historical context, that's how it's been. But it's also been because it's been mostly a community of immigrants, right? Blue-collar workers, people who didn't have voices or knew that they had voices. So that plays into where we are today. So policies that were set when people didn't really understand what the city was doing. So for example, when the steel mills closed, a lot of people I knew left the community, right? Their jobs were gone and they left, and I thought at first the same way. My husband worked there for 15 years and he was devastated. But then I said, hey, wait a minute. They're closing down some of this dirty stuff. That means hopefully we're going to have a rebirth. It's going to mean something different as we move forward. And I was wrong because I wasn't paying attention to the policies that made this area an industrial corridor, and the zoning that allowed companies like General Iron to come here, okay, and the landfills that were still operating. So it takes a fight, just like we shut the landfills down, and it took many years to do that in the community. This is going to take a fight for us to change this, because as you can see, the city still sees us as a dumping ground. Our leaders still feel this is the place of what? Least resistance. Least resistance, where people don't use their voice. So this is, again, this is what we're trying to make people aware of. Let's empower our youth. Let's empower our residents. Understand that the squeaky wheel gets the grease. And so this is what happens because the policies that could have stopped General Iron weren't there. Okay, the city drags their feet. We had the pet coke issue. They threw some regulations at us. Oh, how lucky we were. Well, first off, regulations are only as good as they are enforced. If they're not out here enforcing them, what good are regulations? They want the community to be the ones who are monitoring. Now, let's be real. That really isn't our job, okay? So how serious were they when they give us regulations but nobody to monitor? So once again, this is going to be a big fight, and I think people are becoming aware because the hammer has hit us over the head time after time after time, and I think it's finally waking us up. It's like, hey, we can't continue this way, okay? So that's why we are where we are today.
See, I think people, yeah, I can leave the mask on. Okay. Yeah, I wanted to say something in response to what you were saying, Peggy, about this being, the South Side being considered the space of least resistance, and just how wrong that is, right? Like, that's absolutely how a lot of elected leaders see this, right? Like, we'll throw this down on the South Side where there's already existing pollution that people have been forced to live with. But this is also a community that has a long history of like working class people fighting back. And that's why I believe that like General Iron is not a done deal. Like the city wants to tell us, like, no, this has been in the works, like, you know, there's nothing more we can do. But this is a moment where, like, people are not accepting that anymore, right? Like, this is a moment where 17 schools just removed the police over the summer. So I think this is a moment that we actually can win the type of communities that we all deserve to live in.
Yeah, and the question, how did we get here? This issue of zoning, like when you look at the map that the George Washington Student Voice Committee put up there, it's really, there's a great, you can really see how right along the Calumet River, everything is, there's no streets, there's no green. That's a whole industrial corridor. And I've talked with your alderwoman, Garza, and she's like, oh, it's zoned industrial. And she's like, let's face it, it's never going to be the Riverwalk. And that's BS. And for one, I wouldn't wish that on this community to have a Riverwalk down here. But like, you know, what about a dog park? What about some things, some green industries that the Southeast Environmental Task Force has been calling for? This whole idea of it's zoned industrial and that can't be changed is total nonsense. And the reason we're getting General Iron right now is because they got zoned out of the north side. So zoning can be changed, and the alder people in the community have a say in that. So we're here because we're buying the line they're feeding us about zoning, but we don't have to buy that.
I just want to add one more quick thing. When you talk about zoning, I think it's important for people who are here to know that we are the only community that is zoned for hazardous waste. Can you imagine that? Hazardous waste. Nowhere else in the city of Chicago is that allowed. And did I know that until I got involved with the task force? No. So, you know, it's also because information isn't shared intentionally, right? Nobody knows. Our leaders know, but apparently our leaders are compensating themselves with money or, I don't know, power or whatever. The point is that we now know that, and because we know that, we should all be working to get rid of that first, right? How can we allow hazardous waste in a residence?
Thank you guys very much. Those are really awesome responses. So this next question, I think, has been in everyone's minds, and is essentially one of the main reasons why we're here. Who is General Iron, and why is it imperative for ourselves and our neighbors to keep companies like this out of the 10th Ward? I'd like to hear the perspectives from Lisa and Trinity first, and then we can go on.
I'm gonna kind of let somebody else talk about what General Iron is, but like why it's imperative that we move it out of our neighborhood. Because if you visited our table, SVC table, it does have kind of the connection and the map of the whole southeast side, and then we have pinpointed General Iron's location and Washington's location, and that is literally mere feet away. I think that that's crazy that we're allowing like our students who are already in a predominantly Hispanic school to be breathing in like all these chemicals that we don't need. And that just kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier about like layers of oppression, right? Like this isn't just low income, like we're working class, like we're Black and Latinx, like we're having this environmental issues, problems in breathing in all these air because it's just clear that Chicago officials don't care. But we care, right? So we're going to try our best. Well, we are trying our best to get this General Iron Company out of here because we don't want that for our Washington students because they're the leaders. They're the leaders of this community. They're the only public high school in the 10th Ward. And so I think that it's important that we, as a Washington community, come together to fight General Iron.
Thank you, Trinity. Also, just something to keep in mind as well for my panelists, it's really important for us to be able to make sure this information can be understood by the residents. So a lot of the terms, the common language that we use, they might not be able to understand. So just keep that in mind, because this, you know, it's about community, making sure everybody's on board with one message. So can anyone speak on who General Iron is?
I can certainly tell you who they aren't. And they're not a respectable industry, not a respectable business, if you ask me. Most recently, they released an article in which they stated, one of the representatives stated, you know, why are they being us, the community, why are they denying hard science? Well, first of all, we're not denying hard science. The science is that your industry isn't a clean industry. And then on top of it, so kind of to answer the second part of the question, which is what will the move mean for us and our neighbors? Well, I'd like to connect it to what's happening in Little Village as well. Well, they have experienced, most recently, you know, at the beginning of the pandemic, the collapse of one of the smoke towers. That was a mess, right? They've also been experiencing more truck traffic, semi-truck traffic. If we have another industry here on the Calumet River, alongside with the whatever industrial park they've got building, I mean, this is just more semi-truck traffic. I remember not too long ago, the task force did a count on how many semi-trucks entered certain intersections. And just the count, and going off of what Trinity was saying about breathing in these chemicals, I mean, these are diesel trucks emitting noxious gases. And that's not healthy, especially if they're going to be 2,500 feet away from Rowan Park and Washington High School. It's not safe. And that's all I got to say, honestly.
So I can add to that. General Iron is one of the largest scrap metal operators in the city of Chicago, and they were located on the North Branch of the Chicago River for over 100 years. They were a family-owned business. Scrap metal is a dirty business. There's no way around it, right? You crush things that are rusty, you shred, you know, it's just a nasty business. It's a necessary business, but it's a nasty business. So they were on the north side, and, you know, fine, because you know why? Because we have our own scrap metal yards already. We have one on 85th Street. Right in between residence homes, there's Nicholson Steel where they have a scrap metal yard. We have one Bayou Steel on 106th Street. We have RMG already. We have Standard Auto. I mean, I could name scrap metal yard after scrap metal yard. We did not want any more of that type of business. We were already shouldering our fair share of that stuff, and we surely did not need any more. And so that's why we were fighting this also. We did not want them to dump something that no one else wants in their community at this point on us. So irregardless of the fact that it is, yes, a polluting industry, yes, it's not healthy, and unfortunately it's going to be near Washington High School. It totally was, again, environmental racism by taking something known to be a problem and ship it over to us. Okay? And what is it going to do for us? Zero. What is it bringing jobs? Zero. What is it bringing? 500 more trucks a day. We already have 200 that go through an intersection within 1 hour during the work hours. 200 trucks. We did a count at multiple intersections simultaneously, and 200 trucks plus were going through those intersections. Now we're going to have more. And that doesn't count the warehouses, people. Wait till they go into operation and you have more trucking. Avenue O is going to become a truck route. Mark my words. Okay, you're going to see trucks going past Washington High School like crazy. So this is why we did not want this business here.
Did you want to go, or do you mind? So some additional context here, and you may already know this, but General Iron, what the reason that they're no longer going to be on the north side, so they're right in Lincoln Park currently. You may have seen some of the stuff about them in the news. They got shut down because one of their machinery blew up recently. And that's one of the machinery that they're saying they're going to bring down here to the east side, and they've been bragging about it. And the neighbors in Lincoln Park have been trying to get General Iron out of their neighborhood for many years. And the final nail in the coffin for them was this big development called Lincoln Yards, that the city has given this development $1 billion in tax cuts. to build. And as that development was getting built in Lincoln Park, they wanted this dirty industry out, and they wanted to use the land for either more development or to turn into a park. And then the developers and Mayor Emanuel at the time were like, well, where can this business go? Oh, hey, let's go down here to where it's zoned industrial, where there's already a bunch of industry down here. There continues to be, there's plenty of space. It's the dumping ground, path of least resistance. And it's an interesting thing, who is General Iron, because if you're hearing in the news, and I want to make this point now because they're going to really start pressing this in the media, and Mayor Lightfoot recently defended this move, claiming they're not actually General Iron. So there's this idea of their name. Now they're trying to say we're not General Iron, we're actually, what is it, Southeast Recycling?
Southside Recycling.
Southside Recycling.
Yeah.
So they're going to call themselves Southside Recycling, but as they were filing for the permit to move down here, they were General Iron. The people who will get the jobs down here are the people who had the jobs at the old facility. So not that these are great jobs to have, but then people in this area won't even have access to those jobs. So that's who General Iron is. When they call themselves Southeast Recycling, it is General Iron. There's no difference. The only thing they're promising here is that the facility will be indoors and not outdoors like it was on the north side. But trucks will be here, large piles are going to be outside, and even in their permit, they admit that they will be emitting this particulate matter in the atmosphere called PM 2.5 and PM 10. That's like 30 times smaller than the diameter of your hair. And this is stuff that we'll be breathing in. It can get into our lungs, it can get into our bloodstream, can make asthma worse, can increase the amount of asthma, can potentially cause cancer. So we need to keep that out.
Thank you, Mrs. Stark. A big decision as to why all of these panelists joined us today is because we want to bring awareness to community resistance. I want to know from our panelists, especially our youth leaders, what community resistance looks like to you, and how do you pursue that either by yourself or with your organization?
So for community resistance, because like we all know, we had, Washington had that movement for removing our SROs out of our building, which was successful. But I think especially when we talk community, I think that especially Washington is so integrated within the Southeast side because like we're so, we're like a big ward, but we're the only public high school and like the only like really active like LSC as well. So I think that that's just important when we think about holding events like this. Like community resistance is not only like protesting and like aggressive, like quote unquote, as people in the media would like to call it, but also joy, like unity, like we're coming together and like we're gonna fight for this, and that's really important. But the fact that we're building relationships with each other, the fact that we're getting to know like our neighbors, and they don't want us to be united. They want us to be divided in the Southeast side because that's less of a voice. Like when more people come together, that's more power, and I feel like that's what people are afraid of. But once we start resisting as a big unit and we move together, I think that we really will start to make some change about General Iron.
Round of applause for Trinity, please.
I gotta take my mask off for this one. So this is the question I was really looking forward to because personally, I wasn't always a protester. The first time I ever attended a protest was the climate change rally last year, and probably about a year ago. And I got to speak about what was going on and like how I've been part of like what is my resistance. So personally, Trinity, what you said about it's resistance isn't only protesting and quote unquote aggressively marching, protesting, it's also joy. And I 100% agree with that, because personally I've always found joy in the environment. I've always found joy in nature in all the jobs I've ever worked. So I have a conservation background. I've worked in forest reserves across Cook County. I even worked at Eggers for a whole summer. And that's my way of resistance. Now when I bring up my experiences, when I bring it to the Southeast Youth Alliance, when I bring it to SIA, I bring a background of volunteer experience and stewardship to the land. So part of the spiel that I've been giving to people, to folks who come up to the table, is we've done a lot, but we also have a lot more to do. And what we're aiming to do, one of them specifically, very specific, is more volunteer events at Big Marsh. So I'm not sure how many people know where Big Marsh is. It's really hard to describe because it's so hidden. But essentially, it's a park district just like this park, but it's also a natural area. There's also hiking trails. You can go bird watching there. So, yeah, and most importantly, it's a bike park, right? So what I'm really trying to say is that resistance is also enjoying. And so what we try to do as SIA is we try to get people out there to come out and enjoy a bonfire, but also be able to enjoy the space itself, right? So Trinity, everything you said, getting together and forming that community with one another, right? But also knowing that we have assets, and not just that we show up and say, this is what's wrong, but this is what we also have. So we're trying to change that narrative in that sense, and that's resistance, in my opinion.
I just want to add to that I think how community residents and others can get involved is, first off, when there are meetings, when there's information being put out there, participate. You know, I used to talk to young people at the parks and stuff, and I'd say, look, the first thing you have to do is attend meetings. Even if you don't say a word, you need a body. They want to see who's paying attention, how many people are out there. So you have to show numbers. So definitely get involved. Go to Southeast Environmental Task Force Facebook page. We try to keep you informed. Go to BAMPETCO. Go to UN10s. Pay attention. Have discussions with your neighbors. Lots of times people don't think this is important. Make them aware, and you start spreading the word, and that's how information also strengthens the community. You got to talk about it. Got to talk about those issues, okay? And lots of times things that affect people on the local level, believe it or not, have broader implications. So whatever you accomplish here, believe me, it's going to impact something somewhere else. So you have to look at how important all of this is. You might think, oh, it's just our little community. But no, it's important in a broader sense. It always is. So definitely participate. If something's going on, come on out, join us, give us some of your time. That's the first thing. But in terms of General Iron, real quick, I want to just say that I think you all know that right now, RMG, General Iron, South Chicago Recycling, whatever the heck you want to call it, they are protesting, they're appealing the permit that the IEPA issued them. They said it's too stringent. We said it wasn't strong enough, they're complaining. So that's how good and how confident they are about being a clean operation, right? So you can submit comments. We will have that information on our Facebook page this week as to how you can do it and maybe what you can say to help with that, so that we get, again, community participation from that angle too.
Yeah, no, thanks. Thanks for everybody's really thoughtful comments. I wanted to say something when I'm thinking about what resistance looks like right now, specifically to General Iron. When I was trying to think how I was going to answer this question today, what came up for me is that this is coming up on the anniversary of the teacher strike last year, and I think that, thank you, yeah. And I think that one of the strategies that helped us be successful in fighting to fund the schools that students, teachers, and communities deserve is that we have to highlight the fact that, like, yeah, what Trinity said, like everything about the way the city is organized is meant to divide people, and we have to at every step basically say that we don't accept that, we stand together. Like I can't do my job if there's like 200 trucks an hour driving past my school. And that like the HVAC systems, which is like the ventilation in the schools during a respiratory pandemic, like is older than me. So none of this is disconnected, and I think I don't accept that by the time we can go back into the school buildings, there's going to be General Iron being built up across the street. Like everybody who works and lives and attends schools in this community is going to have to dedicate a lot of time to making sure that this does not happen. And I'm really excited about this event, that we have folks who are fighting against matte asphalt here. Let's give them a round of applause. And like we're also talking to the people who are fighting against Hilco and Pilsen and Little Village. And like something that I'm taking away from these struggles is that like the whole city is like allowing these companies to just like fall through the cracks and like bend the rules to their benefit and like pollute our communities. And it's going to take something at the citywide level to like for people to protect ourselves and say, no, we're not going to allow the city to let corporations come in and just poison our communities.
Thank you. Those were wonderful answers. I do want to share just my own perspective on what community resistance looks like, because, I mean, this is it, you know, listening to one another, caring about what the other has to say. I personally started the campaign after talking to just my family members about General Iron coming to the southeast side. I got concerned because my sister goes to Washington, you know, and that was the initial thought that sparked all of this. I think the biggest thing I do want to make a point of is also that we don't deserve this at all. There's no need for us to having, you know, to constantly look at empty lots. You know, just dirt patches everywhere, just pollution in the air. Like, what's the difference between the people on the south side and the people on the north side? Why do they get nice stuff? Why don't we? Because we're Latinos? Because we're black? Is that why? That doesn't make sense, you know? And it can be frustrating for people to see everything going on top of dealing with COVID, on top of merging onto e-learning, on top of taking care of the kids. It's a lot, you know, and sometimes it's easy to put the environment to the side just because you don't have to immediately deal with it and you don't immediately feel those effects. But just a little bit from a lot of people can go a long way. It's just about keeping yourself informed, wanting better for yourself. We deserve better parks, you know? We deserve dog parks. We deserve this bike route. It should have been here way long ago. They finally got this together. You know, we deserve yoga in the parks all the time, good fishing spots, you know. We deserve a lot more. And I hope that everybody here feels that way, because I genuinely feel that about you guys, is we just deserve a happy environment, a healthy environment to learn, and it just starts with wanting that and building on that idea. There's a lot of good resources up here that I hope you guys can utilize, and we're going to leave it open for residents to ask questions. So if you guys have a question, just raise your hand. Thank you. Round of applause for the panelists, please. Our first one ever. Anyone have a question? Don't be shy.
Are you talking to the mayor? Do you have an action coming up with the mayor?
Yes, ma'am, we sure do. You want to take an action? The question was, is there an action to speak to the mayor? I'm going to let Peggy answer that one, because we do.
We do have an action planned. We can't talk about it right now. It's kind of, it will be out there. Just look at our face. You know, I don't know how to say this, but we do have something in mind, and we will let people know how they can participate. That's what we're going to do. Okay. So yes, we definitely do, because we don't want her to get away with this. You know, saying they're not coming down here, that's an insult to our intelligence. It really is, guys. That's an insult to our intelligence. We know they're coming down here. There's just no question about it.
They should put it in her backyard.
Does anyone else have a question? I'm gonna walk around. My girl Nelly.
My question is for people who aren't in organizations in our community, just individuals, what can we do? I've gone to different events that I've been invited to, but what can our family do in order to help with General Irons? I've done the email. So what do you guys suggest?
Great question. Thank you, Nelly. Not all at once, guys.
First off, I want to thank you for what you have done. Okay, truly. Once again, first thing, encourage your family, encourage your neighbors to do the same. We need numbers. Numbers count. I'm telling you guys, when the North Side met about their modernization of the North Branch, they had 500 people at one meeting. You know, we get 100 people and we get excited. So you have to get those numbers up. Again, we will have directions on Facebook pages and emails and things like that. If you sign up with us, even just send me an email, we will keep you informed. It is difficult. I can't say I'm not going to go tell you march out in front of the mirror right now, okay? But we will keep you informed. It's not an easy process. Sometimes we don't know what to do next. We really don't. So we will keep you informed. Can't stress enough, get other people you know to participate when you do, and I thank you all for anything you have done, because I know we're all busy, we have lives, and this stuff always takes time out of our day, and it wears us down and it stresses us out. So what I would say is, again, be on Facebook, give your email to myself or Yesenia or someone so we can reach out to you so we can pass on information. Okay, and like I said, we will have an opportunity to make a comment to the Illinois Pollution Control Board. We need those comments sent in. Okay?
How do you mobilize the businesses in the area? The businesses in the area.
Okay, how do we mobilize the businesses? Are you being facetious? No, I'm just joking. It depends on what you mean by... Well, that's a good question. Sometimes it's difficult for us because we don't have the capacity to reach out to everybody. Like you said, Olive Harvey, like you happened to stumble into my office and I said, hey, we're doing this event, come out. And hopefully you will help get that word to people at Olive Harvey. Right now with the COVID situation, it's very difficult, first off. You know, this is what they're also taking advantage of. This COVID situation makes our normal operations extremely difficult because we're accustomed to meeting with people, bringing people together, and we can't do that, right? That's something we really haven't worked maybe enough on because Olive Harvey is kind of like out there, but it's not first and foremost in our mind all the time. So
you got McDonald's, you got a station, you got all kinds of businesses in the area that you can kind of put together. You hear me?
I think the question was, how do we mobilize the businesses that are already in the area, such as McDonald's, XYZ?
honestly, I have to say that we don't usually look at the businesses when it comes to fighting industry. Business people tend to stick together. You rarely will get somebody who steps out on the limb in terms of the businesses. I mean, everybody knows this is going on. Our Chamber of Commerces and things like that, I don't see them coming out to support us. So we don't normally go after those people. Maybe that is something we should start looking at differently. But from our past experiences, industry, businesses, they're all kind of intertwined, and they don't like to step on each other's toes. So maybe I can talk to you later if you have some ideas. I welcome them, so I will do that, okay? We will be in contact.
To the question that was asked over here, it's kind of not connected, but I think all of this stuff is connected, and I want to share the success story at Washington High School of the students that organized, and a lot of them are here, and it was led by Trinity here. They worked really hard over the summer to get the local school council to to get the police out of George Washington High School. And the reason I'm sharing this is because up until the moment that the local school council voted, I think every one of us here thought that it wasn't going to happen. And from my perspective, what happened is I wasn't very involved in that. And suddenly I started hearing student testimonials, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is like an issue, like we got to get involved. And so I just started showing up to Peggy's point here, is like, I showed up, and then I learned more, and then massive amounts of people showed up at local school council meetings and started speaking to the local school council. And I'll remind, like, the whole time the local school council was silent on this stuff. We had no idea what they were thinking on this. And then we went from having like 3 people that we knew would have the police out to getting the 6 votes that were needed. So in like the public opinion, the arena of public opinion, that mobilization, people showing up, people constantly raising their voice, resulted in the local school council actually flipping on the issue. And now there are a number of people here in this field that are running for local school council positions, which is the other thing. You don't like what your leaders are doing, get in there and replace them as well. Hint at some of the people here, alder person.
I think great points, especially about local school council elections, which are soon. But I think when we talk about the SRO movement of Washington, we have to talk about levels of uncomfortability in the community and how we because I think we're all kind of woke here. And we all know that General Iron is not a just company and we need it out of the southeast side. But I think there's also a big heaping group of people that sometimes we don't see because we're so like integrated with each other, who are against us and who don't want to hear our voices or who are just maybe not as open-minded. So I think that it's important when we're trying to do these movements that we have to look past it. We have to look past people's backlash. When we look back at historical movements, nobody talks about the backlash. I mean, if you're in a history class, but the vague sense that you get from them is the result of that. The result of movements makes the impact. That's history, not the backlash. So I just think it's really important to bring up, like, especially in this space, that we say that because it's so much, especially when you're like in activism and like in environmental activism as well, because businesses and corporations like have that sense over you. But I think it's important to break that and also take care of yourself, especially.
I'll just add the other detail also to Nellie's question about what should individuals be doing, even though she left. But if you're not part of one of these groups or organizations, you should join them. Get on their email list, go to their meetings, and then like ask other people you know to join them and attend those meetings with you. If you're a student, if you're an Olive Harvey student, or if you are an alum from one of the schools in the path of General Iron, make a group chat where you can like share articles with people and ask them their opinions about it. If you work in this neighborhood, talk to your coworkers about it, and then invite them to the next thing that's happening. And yeah, I agree with Peggy. Like, there's a lot of actions I think that are going to be coming up, especially in the last like month we have, that we can still be outside before the weather gets really bad. So I think we really have to take advantage of like the next month and a half, where we could have like some visible protest and events like this. So yeah, I'm excited to be in this fight with everybody who's here today. Yeah.
All right, I think we have one more question. Yeah.
Not really a question, a comment. So Monday, there is going to be a call-in to the mayor's office regarding General Iron, and there will also be a press conference. So I'll share the information with some of these people here, since I'm not a part of an organization, and you can find it on their Facebook page if you do want to participate and more things.
Thank you. All right. So just a few things to take away from this experience in the panel. I think a big thing is understanding how pivotal communication is. We have to look at our community for what it is, right? And there is a clear divide between the Black and Latino community. Let's get real. That's a problem. And that's keeping us behind. And I think if we can all understand that we're in this struggle together, no matter if we're Latino, no matter if we're Black, and it's different struggles, right? Comparing each other's struggles isn't going to get us any further. Working together will. So I think dropping our egos, being kind, listening, working with one another, patience for sure, because this is a long battle. And we don't always see results. And we lose a lot of the small ones, but we have to keep our eye on the prize. And don't be afraid to ask questions. It's okay to be wrong, it's okay to make a mistake, and it's okay to not know. A lot of anxiety sometimes comes from not knowing what to do. There are outlets out there to help you. It's just a matter of reaching out. So that concludes our first panel. Thank you, guys. Oh, one more question? Okay. Oh, sure.
Hi, my name is Allie. I'm from South Deering, and I've been listening most about General Iron. My almost 6-year-old son has asthma, and a lot of times we don't think, when we find out we have respiratory issue, cancer, we don't ever ask the question where it came from or why. We just accept it and we move on. We go through therapy, chemotherapy. We go through a ton of medication, but we don't ever think about, is it the food we're eating? Is it our environment, the soil? My son's school had lead testing a couple months ago, and they found lead in the water. And like 2 of the fountains, the faculty fountain and I believe a fountain on the 2nd floor. Why is there lead still in our kids' school? Why are we allowing our kids to drink this water? Recently, I started changing the way I'm eating. I'm not 100% vegan, but I want to say I'm 80% there. I started changing my kids' way of eating. Yes, they eat McDonald's once in a while here and there. They eat their meat, yes. But I gave them tofu. People think, ew, tofu. But if you know how to season your food, you can do it. We don't need to, eat meat in order to survive. I started looking into the water we're drinking, the bottled water, pH. I put a new filter in our water fountain sorry, I had to count the kids' head. I put a water filter in our sink at home. I started making my own garden, but then I also thought, okay, yes, I'm planting my own vegetables and fruits, but is my soil good? I finally found this place right here. My grandmother showed it to me and my mother. So hopefully next year we will come and do it over here. But as a community, we need to also stick together, because come election day, they will say your voices need to be heard. But when it comes to our community and anything they don't want us to be loud about, they want us to hush. They don't want to hear us. But when it comes to election, oh yes, we want to hear your voice. So please stick together, talk to your community, your neighbors, your aunts, your uncles, your family members. Let them be aware, what's going on and what shouldn't be happening. Because if you just keep it to yourself, we're not going to grow. And we should do it, as they like to say, for our next generation that are, that are our future. General Island is being put over here by a high school. Maybe my kids one day may go to. Like I said, he has asthma. Right now, he's out of school. He has not had one asthma attack. And I ask myself, why? Why is it when he's in school, every 2-3 months, he's getting sick to where he's in the hospital? They want to send him back in November. Flu season. Why? I'm not saying I love e-learning, because God knows I'm about to throw these kids out the window sometimes. But I would rather not my kids go to school during cold and flu season, especially when they're saying you can't tell the cold and flu from COVID. I would rather not see my son on a ventilator. And it's sad to say, now that the parents on e-learning, hopefully they also get involved with their schools. I was vice president at my son's school for BAC, and we had maybe about 5 or 6 other parents come to the meetings. We need to get together and participate in our schools too, and we need to start appreciating our teachers more. Say hello.
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 Okay, well, I'm gonna wrap it up. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Yes, thank you.
Everybody, round of applause for Allie, please. Wonderful testimony. Thank you so much. We can be a little louder. Come on. I'm just gonna, yeah. All right, guys. Well, that wraps up the panel. We're just gonna disperse some gifts, enjoy some elote, talk to the tables. We also have COVID testing in the orange tent. Super important. It is a no swab, but you'll be fine. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Woo.